Welcome, dear friends, to another wonderful session of exploring the advent of divine justice. In this session, we're going to be starting part 17. And without any further ado, we'll have our opening prayer. Thank you so much.
Magnified be thy name, O my God, for that thou hast manifested the day which is the King of days, the day which thou didst announce unto thy chosen ones and thy prophets and thy most excellent tablets, the day whereupon thou didst shed the splendor of the glory of all thy names upon all created things. Great is his blessedness, whosoever hath set himself towards thee and entered thy presence and caught the accents of thy voice. Beseech thee, O my Lord, by the name of him, round whom circleth in the adoration of the kingdom of thy names, that thou wilt graciously assist them that are dear to thee, to glorify thy word among thy servants, and to shed abroad thy praise amongst thy creatures, so that the ecstasies of thy revelation may fill the souls of all the dwellers of thine earth. Since thou hast guided them, O my Lord, unto the living waters of thy grace, grant by thy bounty that they may not be kept back from thee. And since thou hast summoned them to the habitation of thy throne, drive them not out from thy presence. Through thy loving kindness, send down upon them what shall wholly detach them from all else except thee, and make them able to soar in the atmosphere of thy nearness, in such wise that neither the ascendancy of the oppressor nor the suggestions of them that have disbelieved in thy most august and most mighty self shall be capable of keeping them back from thee. Bahá'u'lláh.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Excellent. First of all, I want to warmly welcome every one of you to another wonderful session. In this session, we're going to be covering paragraph 63 through 73. And I'm just going to share my screen. Let me do that. Oops, I want to be on the first slide. So. Okay, let me do this real quick. Okay, share and full screen it. There we go. Excellent. And I will let Miss Karen O'Brien take it away, okay?
Okay. I want to thank Ehsan for reaching out and asking me to do this, and want to express my appreciation to him and Roya for such an erudite and wonderful presentations. I pray God I come to that level. And I just have to let you know I'm scared to death. But this will be okay. Before we begin with the slides, I want to set the stage a little bit, since we are moving into the part of the letter, the Advent of Divine Justice, that deals with teaching, drawing on all the spiritual resources that have been set out in the first part of the letter. And as you can see from this slide, that these paragraphs 63 through 73 will begin with an overview of the Advent of Divine Justice, then move into the duty and significance of teaching, the transforming power of Bahá'u'lláh, and the revolutionizing force of God, the God-born source. So I find it helpful when I'm in situations where we've taken bits, each section, and gone so meticulously and wonderfully through the letter, paragraph by paragraph, to just stop for a brief moment and gain a global view again. And in this case, learning about the global view took me to the tablets of the divine plan and to Abdu'l-Bahá's trip to the United States, to the West in 1912. He visited, he was here for, I believe it was 8 months to 9 months, and then returned to his home. And Shoghi Effendi has made it very clear, without any reservation, that one of the consequences of Abdu'l-Bahá's visit to the West were the tablets of the divine plan. They were revealed and written and then given to the North American Baha'is, stating their mission. And the mission, I picked up from the Advent of Divine Justice on page 6 in paragraph 15, is through our living sacrifice to usher in that promised world order, that the shell ordained to enshrine that priceless jewel, the world civilization, of which the faith itself is the sole begetter. And so Shoghi Effendi became our guardian. And I have a brief paragraph here in the way of setting the stage a little bit further, written by Amelia Collins, Hand of the Cause, a tribute to Shoghi Effendi. And on page 9, she talks about what happened. Just this brief paragraph, when he had created the system and reared the machinery of the Baha'i administrative order, he suddenly shifted the whole mechanism into gear. He called for the first 7-year plan, the first step in the promulgation of Abdu'l-Bahá's divine plan, which is the instrument for the spiritual conquest of the entire globe. Now, the first 7-year plan dates were 1937 to 1944. The Advent of Divine Justice was written and given to the North American Baha'is December 25th, 1938. So the friends and communities here in the West had already been in a year of meeting the goals that had been given to them in the tablets of the divine plan. Shoghi Effendi brought it home and shifted it into another gear by giving us the plan and then sending the letter that is the Advent of Divine Justice. So the divine plan itself is broken into what is now 3 epics. And I'm looking for my note here. There it is. The first epic was from 1937 to 1963, and it began with this first 7-year plan, of which the Advent of Divine Justice is part. And it concluded with the 10-year crusade. In that time period, there were 19 plans and campaigns. Then in the second epic of the divine plan, which was from 1964 to this year, 2021, there were 11 plans. And the third epic has only just begun, which was told to us in the Rizvan letter of this year, beginning with a 12-month plan, setting and preceding the upcoming 9-year plan. So we are still, and will be for quite a while, building the divine plan completely through to the world commonwealth of Bahá'u'lláh. And that's where we find ourselves now. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and move into the slides and the paragraphs where Shoghi Effendi is talking to the Baha'is then, but also the Baha'is now and the Baha'is of the future about the divine plan and the teaching work. So paragraph 63. Gabrielle, would you please read paragraph 63?
Yeah, sure. Dearly beloved friends, I've attempted in the beginning of these pages to convey an idea of the glorious opportunities as well as the tremendous responsibilities which, as a result of the persecution of the far-flung faith of Bahá'u'lláh, now face the community of the American believers. At so critical a stage in the formative period of this faith, and in so critical an epoch in the world's distant future, that communities must, through the impelling forces of circumstances, arise and carry out. I have uttered the warnings which I felt would be necessary to the clearer understanding and a better discharge of the task lying ahead of it. I have set forth and stressed as far it was in my power those exalted and dynamic virtues, those lofty standards, which, difficult as they are to attain, constitute nothing less the essential requirements of the success of those tasks. A word, I believe, should now be said in connection with the material aspect of their immediate task, upon the termination of which, at its appointed time, must depend not only on the unfoldment of the subsequent stages in the divine plan envisaged by Abdu'l-Baha, but also the acquisition of those capacities which will qualify them to discharge, in the fullness of time, the duties and responsibilities demanded by that great mission, which is their privilege to perform.
On to paragraph 64. Roya, dear, would you please read paragraph 64?
Sure. The 7-year plan, with its twofold aspects of temple ornamentation and extension of teaching activity, embracing both the northern and southern American continents, is now well advanced into its 2nd year and offers to anyone who has observed its progress in recent months signs that are extremely heartening and which augur well for the attainment of its objectives within the allotted time. The successive steps designed to facilitate and covering the entire field of the work to be achieved in connection with the exterior ornamentation of the temple have for the most part been taken. The final phase, which is the triumphant conclusion of a 30-year-old enterprise, has at long last been entered. The initial contract connected with the first and main story of that historic edifice has been signed. The fund associated with the beloved name of the greatest holy leaf has been launched. The uninterrupted continuation to its very end of so laudable an enterprise is now assured. The poignant memories of one whose heart so greatly rejoiced at the rearing of the superstructure of this sacred house will so energize the final exertions required to complete it as to dissipate any doubt that may yet linger in any mind as to the capacity of its builders to worthily consummate their task.
Thank you, Roya, and thank you, Gabrielle. And I thought that we would just go ahead and move straight through the paragraph rather than stopping to discuss it at this point. So paragraph 65, Claudia, would you read, please? Unmute Claudia, if you would, please. Okay, it's muted still. Dear Claudia, it's there you
Here we go.
Thank
Now?
you.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. The advent of divine justice paragraphs under study, paragraph 65. The teaching aspect of the plan must now be pondered. Its challenge must be met and its requirements studied, weighed, and fulfilled. Superb and irresistible as is the beauty of the first Masterclass car of the West, majestic as are its dimensions, unique as is its architecture, and priceless as are the ideals and aspirations which it symbolizes, it should be regarded at the present time as no more than an instrument for a more effective propagation of the cause and a wider diffusion of its teachings. In this respect, it should be viewed in the same light as the administrative institutions of the faith, which are designated as vehicles for the proper dissemination of its ideals, its tenets, and its verities.
Thank you, Claudia, very much. Ms. Yuda, would you read page 66, paragraph 66, please? I think you're still muted, Ms. Yuda. There you go. Thank you.
It is therefore to the teaching requirements of the 7-year plan that the community of the American believers must henceforth direct their careful and sustained attention. The entire community must, as one man, arise to fulfill them, to teach the cause of God, to proclaim its truth, to defend its interests, to demonstrate by words as well as by deeds its indispensability, its potency, and universality, should at no time be regarded as the exclusive concern or sole privilege of Baha'i administrative institutions, be they assemblies or committees. All must participate, however humble their origin, however limited their experience, however restricted their means, however deficient their education, however pressing their cares and preoccupations, however unfavorable the environment in which they live. God, Bahá'u'lláh himself, has unmistakably revealed, has prescribed unto everyone the duty of teaching his cause. Say, he further has written, teach ye the cause of God, O people of Baha, for God has prescribed unto everyone the duty of proclaiming his message, and regardeth it as the most meritorious of all deeds.
Thank you, Ms. Yuda. Okay, we're on to paragraph 67. Pat, could you read paragraph 67, please?
A high and exalted position in the ranks of the community, conferring as it does on its holder certain privileges and prerogatives, no doubt invests him with a responsibility that he cannot honorably shirk in his duty to teach and promote the faith of God. It may at times, though not invariably, create greater opportunities and furnish better facilities to spread the knowledge of that faith and to win supporters to its institutions. It does not, however, under any circumstances, necessarily carry with it the power of exercising greater influence on the minds and hearts of those to whom that faith is presented. How often in the early history of the faith in the land of its birth offers many a striking testimony. How often have the lowliest adherents of the faith, unschooled and utterly inexperienced and with no standing whatever, and in some cases devoid of intelligence, been capable of winning victories for their cause, before which the most brilliant achievements of the learned, the wise, and the experienced have paled.
Thank you, Pat. And so that brings us to paragraph 68. Mary Ann, would you read paragraph 68 for us, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Peter, after Baha has testified, according to the history of the church, was also incapable of keeping count of the days of the week. Whenever he decided to go fishing, he would tie up his weekly food into 7 parcels, and every day he would eat one of them. And when he had reached the 7th, he would know that the Sabbath had arrived, and thereupon would observe it. If the Son of Man was capable of infusing into apparently so crude and helpless an instrument such potency as to cause, in the words of Bahá'u'lláh, the mysteries of wisdom and the utterance to flow out of his mouth, and to exalt him above the rest of his disciples, and render him fit to become his successor and the founder of his church, how much more can the Father, who is Bahá'u'lláh, empower the most puny and insignificant among his followers to achieve, for the execution of his purpose, such wonders as would dwarf the mightiest achievements of even the first apostle of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And that brings us to paragraph 69. Deborah, would you read 69 for us, please?
Sure. The Bab, Abdu'l-Baha, moreover, has said, should a tiny ant desire in this day to be possessed of such power as to be able to unravel the abstrusest and most bewildering passages of the Quran, its wish will no doubt be fulfilled, inasmuch as the mystery of eternal might vibrates within the innermost being of all created things. If so helpless a creature can be endowed with so subtle a capacity, how much more efficacious must be the power released through the liberal effusions of the grace of Baha'u'lláh.
Thank you very much, Deborah.
Thank you.
And we have paragraph 70. Ms. Deany, would you read for us, please? Oh, I think you're still muted. Thank you. Yeah.
The field is indeed so immense, the period so critical, the cause so great, the work so few, the time so short, the privilege so priceless that no follower of the faith of Baha'u'lláh, worthy to bear his name, can afford a moment's hesitation. That God-born force, irresistible in its sweeping power, incalculable in its potency, unpredictable in its course, mysterious in its workings, and awe-inspiring in its manifestations, a force which, as the Bab has written, vibrates within the innermost being of all created things, and which, according to Baha'u'lláh, has, through its vibrating influence, upset the equilibrium of the world and revolutionized its ordered life. Such a force, acting even as a two-edged sword, is under our very eyes, sundering, on the one hand, the age-old ties which for centuries have held together the fabric of civilized society, and its unloosening, on the other, the bonds that still fetter the infant and as yet unemancipated faith of Baha'u'lláh. The undreamt of opportunities offered through the operation of this force, the American believers must now rise and fully and courageously exploit them. The holy realities of the concourse on high, writes Abdu'l-Baha, yearn in this day in the most exalted paradise to return unto this world so that they may be aided to render some service to the threshold of the Abha beauty and arise to demonstrate their servitude to his sacred threshold.
Thank you, Deanie. And so we come to paragraph 71. And Ms. Donna, would you read paragraph 71 for us, please?
A world dimmed by the steadily dying out light of religion, heaving with the explosive forces of a blind and triumphant nationalism, scorched with the fires of pitiless persecution, whether racial or religious, deluded by the false theories and doctrines that threaten to supplant the worship of God and the sanctification of his laws, invertebrated by a rampant and brutal materialism, disintegrating through the corrosive influence of a moral and spiritual decadence, and enmeshed in the coils of economic anarchy and strife. Such is the spectacle presented to men's eyes as a result of the sweeping changes which this revolutionizing force, as yet in the initial stage of its operation, is now producing in the life of the entire planet.
Thank you, Donna. And so we're moving to paragraph 72. Ms. Mina, would you read for us, please?
Lena, did you say Lena?
Mina? Okay. Well, yes, Lena, if you would like to, please.
So sad and moving a spectacle, bewildering as it must be to every observer, unaware of the purposes, the prophecies, and promises of Bahá'u'lláh, far from casting dismay into the hearts of his followers or paralyzing their efforts, cannot but deepen their faith and excite their enthusiastic eagerness to arise and display in the vast field traced for them by the pen of Abdu'l-Baha, their capacity to play their part in the work of universal redemption proclaimed by Bahá'u'lláh. Every instrument in the administrative machinery, which in the course of several years they have so laboriously erected, must be fully utilized and subordinated to the end for which it was created. The temple, that proud embodiment of so rare a spirit of self-sacrifice, must likewise be made to play its part and contribute its share to the teaching campaign designed to embrace the entire Western Hemisphere.
Thank you, Lena. This brings us to paragraph 73. Ms. Darla, would you read for us, please?
Be happy to. Paragraph 73. The opportunities which the turmoil of the present age presents, with all the sorrows which it evokes, the fears which it excites, the disillusionment which it produces, the perplexities which it creates, the indignation which it arouses, the revolt which it provokes, the grievances it engenders, the spirit of restless search which it awakens, must, in like manner, be exploited for the purpose of spreading far and wide the knowledge of the redemptive power of the faith of Bahá'u'lláh, and for enlisting fresh recruits in the ever-swelling army of his followers. So precious an opportunity, so rare a conjunction of favorable circumstances, may never again occur. Now is the time, the appointed time, for the American believers, the vanguard of the hosts of the most great name, to proclaim through the agencies and channels of a specially designed administrative order their capacity and readiness to rescue a fallen and sore-tried generation that has rebelled against its God and ignored his warning, and to offer it that complete security which only the strongholds of their faith can provide.
Thank you, Darla. And so that brings us to the end of these 10 paragraphs. So we can move on to the next slide. And this recaps for us that the beloved guardian initially provides an outline of the letter so far in this 10 paragraphs. And he addressed it in the remainder. Shoghi Effendi highlighted the significance of teaching the cause and how it is a duty of every individual Baha'i. And finally, the beloved guardian describes the nature and impact of the force released through the revelations of the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh, that revolutionizing force born of God that comes into the world with each manifestation's revelation and arising. It's a force that acts as a two-edged sword. On the one hand, it is breaking apart the ties that have been holding together the fabric of human civilization, and on the other, it's unloosing the bonds that had been restraining the advancement of the faith of His Holiness Baha'u'lláh. And just by way of comment here, those bonds that have been unloosed have continued through to this day. We've gone from the very beginning of our duty outlined by Abdul Baha in the tablets of the Divine Plan to taking the faith, raising it throughout North and South America, and took us through all the way through the World Crusade, covering all parts of the planets, carrying the faith far and wide. And then through the rise of mass teaching and taking the faith to large groups of people, and moving into the current epoch of rearing the training institutes and the core activities that are seeing to the needs of the community and bringing us into contact with the greater society, wider and wider applications. So many opportunities born of that force. These 10 paragraphs that we just went through are actually a bridge in the advent of divine justice, as mentioned earlier. So they're kind of like a pivot point in a way, or a fulcrum where things turn. They connect that first part that concern the spiritual prerequisites and the preparation of the individual and the communities for teaching squarely, grounding us in applications of the Spirit. And then the second part, which is coming after this part 17, will focus on then the material aspects of teaching, the plans, the resources, the pioneers, the rearing of the faith, with our feet still grounded in the spiritual prerequisites, which will come in the critical piece of reliance on the transformative power of Baha'u'lláh in another section, and then that revolutionizing force born of God that comes into the world. And it is here and continues to operate full force. So both of these parts are necessary to sink the spiritual roots deep into the transformative power and into that God-born force, for the fruits to come from our duties to come forth, of our responsibility and our task of teaching, as we're guided continually through the future, through future generations, who knows how many, to the golden age and to the world embracing order of Bahá'u'lláh. So that's where we are at this point in the letter. We've just read the bridge. And so at this point, we can move to the next slide concerning the major key points. And please, if you want to talk, please talk.
Karen, just 2 seconds. Beautiful, beautiful recap. And what you were saying reminded me of a talk of one of the friends when they were talking about the tablets of the divine plan by His Holiness Abdul Baha, and then later the beloved guardian. And what he said was very interesting. He said when the beloved master, when he presented the tablets of the divine plan, it was like he called the friends and he said, go forth and build a car. And people were like, how do I do it? What do I do? But there were very few that actually went forth and did it. And they went and built a car, and then they started driving fast and furious, like Martha Root. Just and just went and did it. But what did the beloved guardian do? He took that 20 years of abeyance, building forth the community, and he built a factory, and he built an assembly line. And this is what the wisdom of how the beloved guardian, he realized that now in the first 7-year plan is the launching of the Model T Ford. So this is really, now he's getting the cars and assembly lines out, and he's saying all of us can become pioneers. All of us can enter into the teaching work. Excellent. Thank you, dear Karen. Please.
Okay. So if let's move on to the major key points. And I'm just going to go through these really quickly.
Karen John, before you go ahead, Riaz John has a hand. Sorry about that.
Oh, yes, yes, please, Riaz.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I feel at this juncture, we should pause and realize that something magnificent has happened in the history of the faith. And that is that the country of and the community of the birth of the faith was designated the cradle of the faith. But then something fantastic took place. And then another part of the world in the far west, namely America or North America, was designated the cradle of the administrative order. And I feel this shift speaks volumes that the faith is not tied to the Persian viewpoint or to the Persian believers or the Persian culture. It has been wrestled out of that cradle and installed in the far west of the world, in the western hemisphere of the world, as the cradle of the administrative order, which is defined as the pattern of the future world order. So here's a fantastic shift in the history of religion, that this new cradle, which is a pattern of the future, a cradle for the pattern of the future, has been wrestled out of that Eastern culture and Eastern environment and forcefully installed without any hesitation in the Western part of the world. And if someone could clarify whether the cradle, this cradle of the administrative order, comprises both Canada and the United States, or is it only the United States?
My impression from everything I read was that it was the North American continent, but I would like if dear Ehsan would speak to that point.
As far as I know, it's the North American Baha'i community, comprising of United States and Canada. And it is a very important point that dear Riaz John mentioned. And the reason, in my humble opinion, why this happened is for the union of the Friends of the East and the West, as one of the many reasons why this happened. Why it was not in the original, per se, cradle of the faith. The administrative cradle is here for the purposes of the union of the East and the West, as a symbol of the bringing about of, for the future harmony and establishment of the most great peace. Another reason I could present is that any place, we've also read this, I believe it's in paragraph 32, why America was chosen as a place of places is because of the moral degeneracy, all those problems that we talked about earlier. So to place it as the site for the administrative seat of the faith, in the sense of, you know, the cradle of the administrative cradle of the administrative order, in that sense, is because of its complete opposite, being diametrically opposed. So where it has been chosen will show the supremacy of the faith, emerging from the murkiness of the swamps of this old order. And so it's like becoming like the lotus flower emerging from this swamp. And this is the reality why, another reason why it is being chosen in the West. It's because we talked about sea of materialism in this country. Excellent. Thank you so much, dear Riaz, for pointing that out.
And I ran across that particular explanation also repeatedly as I was looking for material, was that the faith, the birth of the faith and the birth of the administrative order occurred in two places that were so dark, and one specifically sunk in that sea of materialism, that when its light shone forth, it would be unmistakable and be recognized by the world. And this was one of the reasons for the two being chosen. Are there any other comments or questions so far? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Lena.
Yes, I want to know, does this kind of mandate to teach to this level that Shoghi Effendi, lists out in this book, is this on a global level, or just really pushing here in the United States and Canada to develop the administration, or are we talking everywhere in the world?
Ehsan.
Great point. Great question. So in the first 7-year plan, see, there was 2 parts for the first 7-year plan. So now the beloved guardian is going to be opening up the second part of the first 7-year plan. And this is where he enters in, and we're going to be covering that in this part. And that is where he's now saying, go forth to the South America, go forth to Latin America, go forth and pioneer. So now he's now saying, you've conquered all each one of the 50 states and all the provinces of Canada. That was the first part of the 7-year plan. Now he's saying, go forth to all the areas of Latin America and South America. So as to your question, so yes, he's now opening it up to the world in the sense of going forth. It's like the assembly line, the machinery of this car is now, he's saying, yeah, we got the model right. Everything is working good. Now let's send it out to the world.
And I was going to bring up, but during the duty and significance of teaching section, but I think it's pertinent now. I wanted to know what were the objectives of that 7-year plan, that first 7-year plan. And so I looked them up, and this answered some other questions I had as well. There were 3 objectives that were listed: completion of the exterior of the temple in Wilmette, The formation of number 2, formation of a spiritual assembly in each state and province in North America and in Alaska. And 3, the establishment of a center in each republic of Latin America and the Caribbean. And then it went on to state what the outcome was for each of these objectives. And spiritual assemblies were established in every Canadian province, in every state in the USA, and in the 14 republics of Latin America. The home front pioneer goals were achieved. 136 spiritual assemblies were raised locally. There were 197 Baha'i groups that were established. There were 1,300 localities with Baha'is that were established. As well, the exterior of the ornamentation of the house of worship was completed. All of the goals were achieved. The teaching goals were achieved. And we, by the end of this epoch, we were broadcast into the world. I hope that helped answer the question. So shall we move ahead with the major key points of these 10 paragraphs, this bridge? The Baha'i House of Worship in Wilmette is no more than an instrument for a more effective propagation of the cause and should be viewed in the same light as the administrative order of the cause. And I have a wonderful example of the teaching power of our houses of worship coming up. Teaching the cause is an obligation of every Baha'i. Teaching the faith is sharing the heat generated by the fire of the love of God in us. And that is connecting to the transforming power of Bahá'u'lláh and the revolutionizing force born of God. And then there were a few more major points. The receipt of divine confirmation is dependent on active teaching of the cause. As shown by the early history of the faith, many unschooled and inexperienced believers have won great victories for the cause. And we have stories of this coming up. And the force that was released through the revelations of the Bab and Baha'u'lláh is creating unprecedented opportunities for the American Baha'is specifically to arise and to exploit them for the advancement of the cause. And then I think there were 2 more, yeah. With the coming of any new revelation, this force, this God-born revolutionizing force, is released to achieve the purpose of that revelation in the world of creation. And in the revelation of Baha'u'lláh, this force has been producing sweeping changes in the world ever since its release. And so these are the major key points that were in those 10 paragraphs, and that we'll be looking at in greater detail in the remainder of the slides. So let's go ahead with this particular slide, and would Riaz, would you read this particular slide, please?
Overview of the advent of divine justice. In paragraph 63, the beloved guardian gives an outline of the advent of divine justice. Up to this point, let me start again. In paragraph 63, the beloved guardian gives an outline of the advent of divine justice up to this point, and briefly previews future tasks emphasized in the rest of the letter. Shaykh Effendi has addressed the following issues. A, the opportunities and responsibilities that the American Baha'i community emerged as a result of the persecution of the faith of Baha'u'lláh. Let me do that again. The opportunities and responsibilities that the American Baha'i community emerged as a result of the persecution of the faith of Baha'u'lláh. B, the characteristics of mission that the American Baha'i community should embark on in the future. C, a warning to ensure a better understanding of and to discharge the tasks associated with the mission. D, the moral standards that are indispensable, vital, and absolutely critical for the success of those tasks. In highlight on the right, in case you missed it, let's recap. The most vital duty in this day is to purify your characters, to correct your manners, and improve your conduct. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, yes. Let's see the next page. Let's stop for just a moment here. I just wanted to comment on D, in particular, the moral standards that are indispensable, vital, and absolutely critical to the successes of the tasks set before us. I went back in the Advent of Divine Justice to previous paragraphs because I wanted to connect those spiritual prerequisites with the teaching duties before us. These prerequisites underlie the material aspects of the teaching work, and they're connected to our teaching endeavors. So for paragraph 41, it was about the rectitude of conduct. And this quote, it must constitute the brightest ornament of the life, the pursuits, the exertions, and the utterances of every Baha'i teacher, whether laboring at home or abroad, whether in the front ranks of the teaching force or occupying a less active and responsible role. So the broad generality of everyone. Then paragraphs 45 and 46 were about developing a chaste and holy life. And it said, this is regarded as no less an essential factor that must contribute its proper share to the strengthening and vitalization of the Baha'i community, upon which must in turn depend the success of any Baha'i plan or enterprise. It's an essential part of the plan. It must adorn and reinforce the ceaseless labors and meritorious exertions of those whose enviable position is to propagate the message and to administer the affairs of the faith of Baha'u'lláh. And then the third issue, the most challenging issue of overcoming race of prejudice and racism, said, this is paragraph 51, white and Negro, high and low, young and old, whether newly converted to the faith or not, all who stand identified with it must participate in and lend their assistance, each according to his or her capacity, experience, and opportunities, to the common task of fulfilling the instructions, realizing the hopes, and following the example of Abdul Baha, our supreme teaching example, the master. And then in paragraph 52, it said, call to mind fearlessly and determinately the example of Abdul Baha while in their midst, while teaching, and in all manner of life. Recall his courage, his genuine love, his informal and indiscriminating fellowship, his contempt for and impatience of criticism, but tempered by his tact and his wisdom, his keen sense of justice, his spontaneous sympathy for the downtrodden, his ever-abiding sense of oneness of the human race, and overflowing for all its members. That would be an overflowing love for all its members. And displeasure with those who would flout those wishes, deride the methods, and challenge the principles, and nullifying the acts. So going back and searching out the connection of our spiritual preparation with the teaching work, one and all, really brought that home for me, as well as having before us the example of the master in our work. And I wanted to ask Ehsan, if did you have anything that you wanted to add here?
Just want to share one thing, dear Karen. Great recap, truly great recap of bringing it home to the prerequisites that the beloved guardian shared in the earlier paragraphs. But one of the paragraphs you highlighted is paragraph 41. And this is talking about the rectitude of conduct. And in paragraph 41, I just shared this. He says, talking about rectitude of conduct, he says, it must constitute the brightest ornament of the life, the pursuits, the exertions, and the utterances of every Baha'i teacher, whether laboring at home or abroad, whether in the front ranks of the teaching force or occupying a less active and responsible position. It must be made the hallmark of that numerically small yet intensely dynamic and highly responsible body of the elected national representatives of every Baha'i community, which constitutes the sustaining pillar and the sole instrument for the election in every community of that universal house whose very name and title, as ordained by Bahá'u'lláh, symbolizes that rectitude of conduct, which is the highest mission to safeguard and enforce. Why I brought this up after you just talked about it is because the beloved guardian often in his writings utilizes the terminology of army. When we go out teaching, we are an army of God. And in this paragraph 41, he talks about in the sense of the front ranks, or what does he say? The front ranks of the teaching force, or occupying a less active and responsible position. Where are you? Where am I in this army of God? We have to think about that. Am I in the front ranks? Am I occupying an active and responsible position in this force of teaching? So this is something, dear friends, we have to think about daily in our meditation. And how can we be more active in the aspect of our teaching work? Beautiful points, dear Karen. Thank you so much.
Also, the example of the teacher, Baha'u'lláh in the Gleanings, page 335, talked about the example of the teacher. And this goes right back to these spiritual prerequisites and characteristics of rectitude of conduct, the chaste and holy life, and blotting, getting rid of, and healing the prejudice and the racism that exists in the world. Baha'u'lláh stated, whosoever ariseth to discharge this duty, teaching, must needs adorn himself with the ornament of an upright and praiseworthy character, so that his words may attract the hearts of such as are receptive to his call. And then Shoghi Effendi continues in a compilation called The Individual in Teaching, through example, loving fellowship, prayer, and kindness, the friends can attract the hearts of such people and enable them to realize that this is the cause of God indeed and not merely words. In essence, we are becoming magnets through the development of these spiritual prerequisites in ourselves, and attracting the hearts of those who are prepared by their life circumstances, by the revolutionizing force born of God, that they will be attracted to the faith. And we, through our very characteristics, are like those magnets that are attracting, and our words attract and have a power. It's one of the powers of the creative word, that of magnetism, attraction. And these very characteristics, as I read, became very clear. This attracts the hearts to Baha'u'lláh. And
one quick point here, Karen. In the gleanings from the writings from Bahá'u'lláh, it says, first and foremost, teach yourself. So first and most importantly, we have to teach ourselves. But what does it mean, teach yourself? This doesn't mean just put intelligence up here or learning the writings and history and the proofs. Teaching yourself means putting on the armor of God. Like when Roya Khademi was talking about how all of these prerequisites need to be part of our inner life. This is teaching ourselves first and foremost. So when Baha'u'lláh says, let deeds, not words, be your adorning, so that we are the proof of the faith. So when we open our mouth, that they come and look at us and they say, yes, this is truly a Baha'i. Yes, I can now accept the faith because he is truly living the faith. He is not just a preacher and just talking the talk, but he's actually walking the walk. And this is the reality of why the beloved guardian went through so much to explain how to be a Baha'i, live the life. And now he's now talking about the aspects of pioneering coming up, all the intricate aspects of pioneering coming up in this second half. Excellent. Thank you, dear Karen.
And as just one other thing, Abdul Baha, the beloved master, once again in that compilation on the individual and teaching, further elucidated the aim. And he said that the aim is this: the intention of the teacher must be pure, his heart independent, his spirit attracted, his thoughts at peace, his resolution firm, his magnanimity exalted, and in the love of God a shining torch. Should he become as such, his sanctified breath will even affect the rock. Otherwise, there will be no result whatsoever. We've been given, in a certain sense, a master key in attracting the hearts and in teaching the faith. So that's what I wanted to add, Ehsan. Thank you very much for that elucidation. Let's go on to the next slide on this page. And Miss Donna, you've read, so let me move on. I'm getting all confounded here with the different lists of people. Miss Betty, are you there? Would you read this slide, please, on the building capacity?
I don't see well enough to read it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'll move on to Dennis McGregor. Would you read, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. The remainder of the advent of the divine justice concentrates on the material aspects of the community's immediate task. The completion of this task would not only unfold subsequent stages of the divine plan revealed by His Holiness Abdul Baha, would provide opportunities for the American Baha'i community to acquire those capacities that will enable them to discharge the mission they are destined to complete. In paragraph 64, the beloved guardian describes the progress made on one of the major goals of the first 7-year plan of the American Baha'i community, the completion of the exterior of the Baha'i House of Worship in Wilmette, Illinois.
Yes, and I wanted to offer an example here of the teaching, the enormous teaching that our temples do. And I recently was able to watch a program that Mr. Sabah, the architect for the Lotus Temple in India, presented. And part of his slide program showed the wide, broad effect of the teaching capacity of the temple. And it really brought home to me then what Shoghi Effendi here was saying about the ornamentation on the house in Wilmette, that it's regarded as an organ for teaching. And in the program on the Lotus Temple, we were shown the structure and also the museum that exists beside it. And every day on a daily basis, thousands of people visiting as just an ordinary course of events. Every day was like that. Thousands of people visiting, touching their hearts as they went into the temple to say prayers, as they went into the museum, as they gathered with their families and their friends on the grounds of the Lotus Temple. It was truly amazing to see this direct teaching example of the temple in India. And then just as amazing was that on its own, the government of India has adopted the Lotus Temple as its symbol for building the unity and harmony of humanity. And they have displayed this broadly as a symbol of India now, in magazines, in books, in airports, and on buses, broadly showing to the world this temple and how it stands as symbol for attaining the unity of humanity. And it really brought home to me the teaching example of our temples. So I just wanted to interject that there. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to add? Okay, so this brings us to slide 20 on the duty and significance of teaching. So we get into the purpose of the advent of divine justice, teaching, and helping us to understand teaching.
Oh.
So, yes, someone wanted to comment? Okay, Miss Luann, would you read this this particular slide, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
In paragraph 65, the beloved guardian addresses the second major objective of the first 7-year plan of the North American Baha'i community. Extension of the teaching activities in both the northern and southern continents of America. In highlighting the significance of expansion of the faith, Shoghi Effendi notes that the temple is no more than an instrument for the more effective propagation of the cause and should be viewed in the same light as the administrative order of the cause. The American believers should direct their careful and sustained attention to the teaching requirements of the 7-year plan, teaching the Baha'i faith.
The teaching requirement. Thank you, Luann. Yes, that is the primary objective, the teaching of the Baha'i faith. And as stated earlier, we saw how the community in North American Baha'i community arose to the occasion and achieved those objectives and more. Okay. Okay. Valerie, would you read this one, please? All right. Is Valerie there? Okay. Let me see. We'll move on.
Sorry. Takes
there
me a
you
minute to unmute.
Sure.
Duty and significance of teaching. The importance of teaching as a duty for every individual is emphasized in paragraph 66. Shoghi Effendi cites statements from His Holiness Bahá'u'lláh to demonstrate that teaching of the cause is an obligation prescribed on everyone. The supreme body, the Universal House of Justice, refers to teaching as the cornerstone of the foundation of all Baha'i activity is teaching the cause. As Abdu'l-Baha has categorically proclaimed in his will and testament, the guidance of the nations and peoples of the world is the most important of all things, and of all the gifts of God, the greatest is the gift of teaching.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you want me to read the other?
Yeah, yes, please.
Say, teach ye the cause of God, O people of Baha, for God hath prescribed unto every one the duty of proclaiming his message, and regardeth it as the most meritorious of all deeds.
Yes, thank you, Valerie.
Welcome.
So, paragraph 66 on the duty of all for teaching as an obligation of every Baha'i. And so I found some additional quotes I was just going to add here about it being the obligation of every Baha'i. From a letter written on behalf of Shoghi Effendi, Baha'u'lláh has enjoined upon the Baha'is the sacred obligation of teaching. We have no priests, therefore, the service once rendered by priests to their religions is the service every single Baha'i is expected to render individually to his religion. He must be the one who enlightens new souls, confirms them, heals the wounded and the weary upon the road of life, and gives them to quaff from the chalice of everlasting life the knowledge of the manifestation of God in his day. And it's this point that we will revisit in the paragraphs upcoming on the transformative power of Baha'u'lláh and the revolutionizing force of God. At the same time, the master referred to the believers as arcs of salvation. This comes from the Star of the West, volume 8, number 8, page 104, August 11, 1917. Abdu'l-Baha said, I desire that you may see the divine ships. These ships are the blessed sails who are traversing the sea of divine mercy. Their propellers are the powers of spiritual love, and their captains are the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. No ship is ever wrecked in this sea. Its waves are life-giving. Each one of the friends of God is likened to an ark of salvation. Each ark saves many souls from the storms of troubles. The signs and traces of these sails are never-ending and eternal. The future centuries and cycles are like the sea, on the surface of which these arcs glide blissfully toward their spiritual destination. I just love the visual of all of the friends being these arcs on that sea, sailing out in all directions.
Share that quote with me, Karen, so I can share that with the class. That was an awesome quote.
I will. Yes, I'll send that to you. Yes, absolutely. So I want to invite any comments, anything that you wish to say.
May I say something?
Yes, please, Tesfaye. Hi.
Yeah, I was listening. There are so many things going on, we've been told from the Bahá'u'lláh and Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi in the House of Justice. But when I come to realize the reality, are we Baha'is are really teaching the cause of God? Because what I see in so many meetings, most of us, we don't know even how to present the information in purest form for the seekers. We have that kind of problem. We have And then secondly, most of the time when I go to the assembly meetings and then feast and stuff like that, you can't see more Baha'is during the active period of time, not like the COVID time right now in Zoom. There are a lot of inactive Baha'is, and we didn't even try to bring them back to the faith, and we didn't understand what the problem and what is the cause. And instead of seeking for the new seekers, we need to have the ones that we have to bring it back and to grow the number of the believers. But I didn't see anything. Maybe I'm looking in a negative way, or I don't know how you guys are feeling. And then when we come to teaching, always they are saying the example of Abdul Baha, on the foot of Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha is a very unique person. He has the greatest listening power that he has, but we don't have that listening. And then when he speak and talk, there is no comments and no arguments and anything what he is going to give. So we have to develop a lot of qualities that we have to develop ourselves, like the faculty of inner vision, to understand most of the time, to get the true sources of the information and deliver it in a purest form and in loving manner to attract the seekers' heart, and then to do all these things. But I didn't see all these things because sometimes teaching, there is no formula that is to be prepared and then take it with a spoon and go and feed it like that. So it is up to us. The way how we approach every individual is different. So that's why I'm trying to articulate here. We need to know more information and how to deliver and how to present ourselves in front of the seeker and in the purest form, and then try to listen to them very well. That's what I try to comment.
Thank you, Tesfaye. And I think that is really an important point, where many of us feel, how do I enact all of this? How do I fulfill these teaching responsibilities, this duty? And we come across many different writings that tells us the characteristics to have and to listen to those we are teaching, and just they're in great abundance out there. What I would like to do is to invite Ehsan to comment, because we have upcoming, after this particular section 17, other sections that are going to be specifically about the teaching. And I'd like to invite his comment on your question.
It's a great question, because when we look at our faith, and we see numbers and we look at the roles, it's very easy to get down, and we can look at activity of individuals and we say, oh, there's so many people who are not active. And it's very easy to get down, and disheartened. And I always remember this wonderful talk by William Sears. And he said, whenever you look at these realities, these problems, he says, drown your problems in a sea of new believers. This is the reality. We have to drown ourselves in a sea of new believers. We have to teach, dear friends, with so much force and so much life and so much energy and so much trueness. And when I say trueness, we have to have such a level of purity of motive and love for the heart that we are teaching. And as dear Tesfaye says, that all of the things that we have been talking about up to this point, These are the realities that need to become part and parcel of us. When dear Karen said there's no formulaic of how to teach, it's true. There's no exact formula of how to teach, but the beloved guardian up to this point has outlined all the essentials that need to be part and parcel of teaching. You know, so you have to have truthfulness, you have to have justice, you have to have, you know, honesty, you have to have, so in that sense, there's a degree of formula. You have to have that, you know, A equals A, you have to have that in your reality of who you are.
Hello?
So these are part and parcel of what we should be as a teacher of the cause. Once it's internalized in our reality, we should be also building our knowledge, as dear Tesfaye says, so when we can present it in the purest form. So when our tongue can, you know, open, it is giving off the purest form of the writings. And so it affects like a magnet the hearts of people. And it's not just our own words. There was a great teacher, Rushad, as they say, passed away. Almost every word he opened his mouth was a talk from Abdul Baha. Almost every word. And he's an incredible teacher because he had memorized the entire promulgation of universal peace in Paris talks and Abdul Baha in London. He had memorized the talks. And so when he opened his mouth to teach, and I shared this one anecdote, and I think I shared this in a previous session, that he attached a piece of string and he would write this bus to his finger and he would wiggle it just so people would, you know, see, why is this person wiggling a piece of string? And so he would immediately then start going off on a whole talk from Abdul Baha, and he would blow them away from his love. And this is, dear friends, when that love penetrates our reality, stirs us into our vibrating organism, cannot but help pour it out to others. So that's really all I have to say, is that when that love permeates all spaces, whether it's the institution of the spiritual assembly, when it penetrates the community and it enters into the dialogue spaces of the community in the sense of the 19-day feast. Because right now, obviously, our reality of teaching is kind of limited in sense of a COVID world. It's hard to get out and talk to people. But once this opens it up, is teaching on the forefront of our brains? In the forefront of our hearts? Are we right now, in a sense, preparing ourselves to be great teachers of the cause? Are we thinking that our homes are going to be spaces for 19-day feasts and attracting, not 19-day feasts, firesides, that's what I meant, for fireside spaces to teach the cause? So this is the reality. Are we preparing ourselves? So when this environment opens, there will be great announcement and teaching. That's how we should be thinking. Thank you, dear Karen.
And when we come to, and thank you, Ehsan, very much for that. When we come to the sections following the duty and significance of teaching, one on the transformative power of Bahá'u'lláh, and the other on the revolutionizing force that has been released into the world by the coming of the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh, we are going to cover the powers of that creative word and how though the creative word has been sunk deep into our hearts, and that's where we have to put our roots as well, so that when it's over and over said, when we are striving to transform ourselves, we are rooted in the fire of the love of God, the heat of that love of God. And in the coming section on the revolutionizing God-born force, there will be, we will have some information that I found in a book on the creative word, using the creative word. What can we do to prepare ourselves, and what can we do in our teaching? And I'm thinking also that I haven't looked ahead in any of the remaining paragraphs upcoming, but I'm thinking we're going to address these very things that are, I testify, as very near and dear to our hearts. I know that I am, and I can also speak for my husband, Pat. We are constantly talking about what can we do? How will we reach? What will we say? And then trying to ground ourselves in more prayer and more meditation and preparation, as San pointed out earlier. Thank you for the question, because it really is central.
One last thing, I know the hour is getting late, dear Karen,
yes,
and we're getting close
yes.
to the time. I want to share one thought on this aspect of teaching before we close our session. It's such a brilliant exposition, dear Karen, and you did such an awesome job today. I'm so proud of you. And so one thing I want to share is that when we even reach that point of saying, yes, I can't but help want to teach the cause of God. First and foremost, we have to have reliance on Him. Reliance on Him. Because if we think it emanates from ourselves, our knowledge, us, we immediately fall. Our words have no power. We have no effect. We have to have, in the little game, when there's a game that they do in rehab, it's a trust exercise. And you fall back, and you're supposed to have complete trust in whoever is going to catch you, you know? And it's to show that there's others out there that will support you in life, you know? And so this aspect of falling back, can we fall back upon, and Bahá'u'lláh is always there. We have to have full reliance on Him. I mean, like, look at the example of Martha Root. Barely anything in her bag, and she just left. Before even the tablets of the divine plan were read, she was already bags packed and ready to go to South America. Reliance on Him. Are we reliant on Him? When the call goes forth, are you there and ready to open your mouth and proclaim His name? Reliance on Him. This is something that we pray for. And this is a lifelong journey, that to turn ourselves to be fully reliant on Him is truly an aspect of love. But that is it for tonight. I am so truly proud of each one of you, and give a round of applause to dear Miss Karen. We love you. We love you. So wonderful.
Yay, Karen.
Amazing.
And thank you. Big applause. And so this concludes the first.
May I say one quotation?
Please, dear Tesfai, go for it.
Yes, please.
Yeah. You know, as far as teaching is concerned, what Abdul-Baha says is, all individuals are farmers. Every soul sows certain kind of seed. But at the season of the harvest, there will be gathered no result except those seeds, the beloved of the faith. That's what he said. So we have to make sure to do something before that gathering is coming.
You're absolutely right.
Well said. Well, very well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
And without any further ado, we'll have our closing prayer. And next week, should hopefully conclude this part 17. And this is a section, as dear Karen has been explaining, we'll get more into this God-born force that emanates when a revelation comes into being. And the more that we immerse ourselves, the more that we read, and when I say read, it means internalize this faith into our very being, this God-born force animates our inner reality, and we will be able to affect the external realities of all society, because it becomes part and parcel of us. It's like we are eating the bread of life. It comes into us. So this is the God-born force that has been poured out through this new revelation of Bahá'u'lláh. So it's very exciting. I can't wait for dear Karen to expound on it as we get into the next section. So Let us have our closing prayer. Any one of the dear friends would like to share a closing prayer. And thank you again, dear Karen, for a wonderful session. Yes, we have a hand from Miss Darla. Thank you so much.
O God, my God, give me to drink from the cup of thy bestowal and illumine my face with the light of guidance. Make me firm in the path of faithfulness. Assist me to be steadfast in thy mighty covenant, and suffer me to be numbered with thy chosen servants. Unlock before my face the doors of abundance, grant me deliverance, and sustain me through means I cannot reckon from the treasuries of heaven. Suffer me to turn my face toward the countenance of thy generosity, and to be entirely devoted to thee, O thou who art merciful and compassionate. To those that stand fast and firm in thy covenant, thou verily art gracious and generous. All praise be to God, the Lord of the worlds.
Thank you very much, Miss Darla. And thank you everybody for another wonderful session. Miss Karen, as always, truly wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful week.
Bye.
Allow us.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Good night.
Aloha.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Karen.